Hi, my name is Tom Boger. I'm a product line manager at Apple Computer, and I'm here to take you through an overview of our exciting new consumer computer, the iMac. Not too long ago, Apple had what amounted to be a pretty confusing product strategy. While the individual products themselves were good, it was very hard to figure out what computers to buy and when. So we kind of went back to the drawing board. We figured out who our customers were and what type of products they want to buy. We basically simplified things into two types of customers that we believe we have. First of all, we have consumers as customers, and we have professionals as customers. And as it turns out, those customers really want to buy just two types of computers. They want to buy desktop computers, and they want to buy portable computers. So by coming up with this matrix, this basically represents Apple's new hardware product strategy. From a professional standpoint, we already have a product line. That's the Power Macintosh G3, and that's this quadrant right here. From a portable perspective, we also have a product line for the professional, and that's the PowerBook G3. From a consumer perspective, we will have a portable, and we'll be talking about that in the first half of calendar 1999, and that leaves us with this quadrant right here, the consumer desktop. And that's what the iMac is all about. It's about creating a computer for consumers. When we sat down 10 or 11 months ago and tried to decide what we should fill that consumer quadrant with, we looked out across the industry and we noticed a number of things. First of all, we noticed that while the computer industry's pricing has been decreasing towards the sub $1,000 price points, people are also making sacrifices to get to those price points. People are sacrificing things in three ways. First of all, those computers that people are buying for under $1,000 are very slow. They're buying yesterday's technology, so that's Cyrix processors, AMD processors, and Intel's new Celeron processor. That's number one. Number two, those products are actually, in our opinion, ugly. It's basically thrown together sheet metal, slapped together with screws, really not very aesthetically pleasing. And the third thing is that computers under the $1,000 price point are actually getting more complicated. So we've actually bought these computers ourselves. We've opened them up and tried to set them up ourselves, and we found gazillion manuals, and you had to have things color-coded just to figure out which ports things go into. So we wanted to address those three things with the iMac. So with the iMac, we didn't want to make those compromises. We wanted to bring a low-cost desktop to market for consumers, but at the same time not have a slow, ugly, complicated computer. So with the iMac, we addressed those three things, with the iMac being redefining the boundaries of speed, style, and simplicity. But at the same time, the iMac is being created in the Internet age. This is 1998, not 1984. And therefore, we had to make decisions specific to the iMac to make sure that we are allowing our customers to take advantage of all the wonderful power and creativity of the Internet. So as I mentioned, again, the iMac, it redefines the boundaries of speed, style, and simplicity in an entry-level desktop computer. So what I'd like to do is go into each one of these themes for a moment and talk about why the iMac is so fast, and why the iMac is so beautiful, and why the iMac is so simple to use. So the first topic I'd like to talk about is speed. Now, why did we concentrate on speed in an entry-level desktop computer? Well, two reasons. First of all, we know that it's consumer software that requires the most processing power of computers today. Things like games, multimedia titles, edutainment titles, etc. So with the iMac, we wanted to make sure that it ran today's software really, really well. But we also know that consumers are always very hesitant when they're buying computers about their computer being obsolete in a short amount of time. So we wanted to make sure that the iMac was fast, not only to run today's software, but to run tomorrow's software really well as well. So how did we achieve such incredible speed on an entry-level desktop computer? Well, the answer is with what we've done with the logic board. So this is the logic board of the iMac, and it's basically in two parts. There is a daughter card which contains all of the processing, and then there's the rest of the logic board that basically contains all of the I/O. So let's start with the daughter card for a second. On the data card, we have a PowerPC G3 processor. This is what is at the heart of why the iMac is so fast. It's a 233 megahertz processor. And in addition to having the 233 megahertz G3 processor, we've done something that our competitors haven't at an entry-level desktop space, and that is add 512K of backside cache. Now this backside cache runs at half the speed of the processor, or 117 megahertz. And having this cache together with the G3 processor is what makes the iMac so incredibly fast, and much, much faster than systems at a comparable price from the competition. But there's something new about the iMac that's different than any other Macintosh before this, and that is that with the iMac, instead of having 4 megabytes of ROM on the logic board, we have now taken most of the ROM and actually put it into RAM. Having this ROM and RAM architecture significantly speeds many of the operations of the iMac, especially things that uses interrupts. So things like surfing the web or multimedia or things that are constantly accessing the ROM have gotten much, much faster with the iMac. So even though the iMac is a 233 megahertz G3 based processor product, it's actually faster than previous Macs that we've shipped with similar specifications. So the G3 is the first reason that the iMac is so fast. Another reason that the iMac is so fast is because we've used the ATI Rage 2C graphics chip. The Rage 2C has both 2D and 3D acceleration, and it's a 64-bit chip. So it allows you to fly through multimedia titles and play games and go through edutainment titles really quickly. A third major reason why the iMac is so fast is we've embraced a brand new serial technology, and that serial technology is USB, or the Universal Serial Bus. And I'll cover more about that in a second. The last reason why the iMac is so fast is because we've put fast Ethernet on the logic board. In fact, this is the first Macintosh to have fast Ethernet built into the logic board. So what is fast Ethernet? Well, fast Ethernet is basically 100 megabit per second Ethernet. So this is the RJ45 connector on the logic board that allows the iMac to connect to an Ethernet network. And this Ethernet also auto-negotiates. So what it means is it can go at 10 megabits per second or 100 megabit per second. Now it depends on what your network is running at, and it basically works with the routers and switches to figure out, is your network running at 10 megabit per second or 100 megabit per second, and it actually runs at the appropriate speed. So these four things, the PowerPC G3 processor with 512K backside cache, the Rage 2C 3D and 2D graphics accelerator, the USB bus, and the fast Ethernet is why the iMac is so fast. So to prove that the iMac is so fast compared to its competition, we went out and we tried to find the best, most reputable industry benchmark we could find that was also cross-platform. And we found one from Byte magazine. So Byte has a test called Byte Marks that you can run on both Macs and Wintel machines, and you can compare the two in terms of performance. And what we did is we went out and we found a comparably priced system to the iMac. In this case, it was a system that had a Celeron processor running at 266 megahertz. And we ran the Bytemark test on both the iMac and the Celeron-based product. And lo and behold, it looks like the iMac, via benchmarks, is over twice as fast than its competition. But something actually happened that was even more delightful. And that is, we went out and we found the baddest, fastest 400 megahertz Pentium 2 based product that we could find, and we ran the same benchmarks. And guess what? The iMac is actually faster than that product as well from a Bytemark perspective. So Bytemarks are a way for us to compare the iMac with the competition. USB. I talked a little bit earlier about why the iMac is faster, and USB is one of those components. USB stands for Universal Serial Bus. And it's actually a new serial technology that was invented by Intel 3 or 4 years ago. It's found on many Wintel computers, and now it's making its debut in the Macintosh market on the iMac. USB has a number of great advantages that Macintosh customers have not had in the past. First of all, it has hot plug and play. Now the Macintosh community is used to plug and play, but not hot plug and play. And what this means is that you can actually connect devices into your USB ports as the computer's running. The operating system automatically scans for the driver for that device, dynamically loads it, and then you can use the device right away. You don't have to restart your Macintosh. So that's the first major advantage of USB. The second major advantage of USB is that it's extensible. Okay, so USB was designed from the very beginning to be extensible. And in the past, Mac customers have ran into limitations with existing Mac serial, i.e. having only 2 serial ports. With USB, you can actually add 127 devices to one computer. You do this with the addition of hubs and port replicators. So 127 devices can theoretically be hooked up to the iMac. A third major advantage of the iMac is that it's industry standard. This means that peripheral vendors are tremendously excited about Apple adopting the USB as its serial connecting technology. This means that third-party vendors can offer one product in the store that has a CD with both Mac drivers and Windows drivers. In the end, this means a much wider selection of peripherals for Mac customers, as well as lower prices and a much better business proposition for our developers. Here's a little slide which shows you a performance comparison between ADB, or the Apple Desktop Bus, traditional Mac serial technology with GeoPort, and USB both at 1.5 megabits per second and 12 megabits per second. And as you can see, USB is far faster than any serial technology we've ever shipped. In fact, the fastest serial technology previous to USB is GeoPort, which is 2 megabits per second, and USB is 12 megabits per second, which is over 6 times faster. So that's USB, and that's all of the reasons why the iMac is so fast. The next major theme of the iMac is style. Now, people ask me, why would you concentrate so much on style in the iMac? Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, we believe that as computers become more and more ubiquitous and more a part of everyday lives, style and design are going to become much more important. And Apple just so happens to have one of the world's best industrial design groups designing our computers. So from a style perspective, we think that people can appreciate the computing technology that they have in their homes or in their desks. An example of this is watches. 10 years ago, the average American owned one watch. And then Swatch came along and introduced style and fashion into the watch industry, and the average American owns 7 watches. And we think we can see the same type of reaction in customers with style with the iMac. Another reason why we concentrate on style so much with the iMac is people are putting out their hard-earned money to buy a computer. And we don't think they should have to settle for some ugly, beige, thrown-together sheet metal that the competition offers. We want people to be proud of every computer they buy from Apple. So style. Let's talk about the things that we did from a style standpoint with the iMac. The first thing that people notice about the iMac is its industrial design. They notice how beautiful it is and how it seduces them to come up and touch it and feel it and take a closer look. We accomplish that a number of ways. First of all, we're using translucent materials. These translucent materials are actually polycarbonate plastics, some of the toughest plastics we ever shipped on any Macintosh previous. This is actually the same type of material that they make to use bulletproof glass. And then with the iMac, we actually have 2 types of colors. We have a Bondi blue, and we have an ice color. And this color is something that, again, seduces people into touching the iMac, feeling the iMac, and something that they can be proud of. But the other thing about the industrial design is that it's also very practical. You notice that we spent a ton of time on the profile and the size of the iMac. This makes the iMac both beautiful as well as practical. As you look at the iMac, you'll notice that you can hardly find a straight line anywhere, but it's also very small in size. It hardly takes up any desk space whatsoever. This makes it very practical. We've actually gone out into classrooms and into people's homes and photographed where people place computers today. And it's amazing the small, cramped spaces that people need or that people use to put their computers in. And so we think the iMac is going to fit into many places where today's computers don't fit at all. Another aspect of the industrial design is that everything is in one unit. If you're looking at it from the side, we actually have a built-in foot, okay, here, which you can flip under and tilt the iMac 17 degrees, depending on your viewing angle. We also wanted to make the iMac very practical from where you access your cables. So you notice on the iMac, on the side of the iMac, there's a little door. And that's so that instead of having to reach around the very back of the iMac in a dark corner and try to access the ports, you can get to the ports on the side. But again, to maintain the integrity of the look and feel of the iMac, we actually have a little door here where we hide the ports, and we have little holes where you can route the cables out the front and the back. If we look at the front of the iMac, again, we carry out this translucent design. At the top of the screen, we have a built-in microphone. On each side of the screen, we have stereo speakers. Okay. Embedded in this stereo speakers is 4 megabit per second IRDA, which allows you to transfer information to other devices that support the IRDA standard. Right now, those devices can be things like PowerBooks, Newtons, and even the eMate. On the other side, on this side of the design, we actually have 2 headphone jacks. These headphone jacks are useful in both education as well in people's homes, where people, either from an education perspective, you want to have 2 students sharing the iMac with headphones on, or in the home perspective, or in the case of the home, you want to have 2 people sharing the iMac, maybe playing a multi-user game, but not disturbing the rest of the people in the house. Continuing with the front of the iMac, we also have the power button right here. This power button has an LED behind it, so when the iMac is on, it's green. When the iMac is asleep, it's amber, and when the iMac is off, there's no LED. In the center of the iMac, we have a 24x CD-ROM. Okay, and let's see, that's it for the front of the iMac. So here we have the back of the iMac. We have a little saying in Apple. We think that the back of the iMac actually looks better than the front of the competition. But in looking at the iMac, there's also a couple of things to notice. The major thing to notice is that we do indeed have a handle integrated into the back of the iMac. This handle is made for carrying the iMac, whether you want to move it from room to room or desk to desk. This handle is actually extremely tough and rigid and built right into the infrastructure of the iMac such that it can sustain 4 to 5 times its weight. The other reason for having that handle there is because it's part of the iMac structure. It's one way to lock the iMac down. So in a situation where you want to keep the iMac secure, you simply loop your cable, whether it be a piece of metal or fiber optic, through the handle, and you can secure your iMac to the desk. So this is the keyboard of the iMac. Now we've carried through the design language from the main iMac itself into the keyboard in the respect that we also have the same Bondi blue and ice colors in the iMac, and we even have the keyboards themselves being translucent. But as I mentioned with the iMac itself, not only is the keyboard beautiful, it's also very practical. So one of the things you might notice is the fact that while the iMac is a full-size keyboard in terms of distance between keys, it takes up very little desk space because we've removed a lot of the extra plastic that sits around the keys of most keyboards. We've also, even though it's a very compact in size, tried to maintain most of the functionality of a standard size keyboard. So across the top we still have our function keys. Over here we still have our help, home, page up, and page down keys. And we even have an inverted T right here, which is particularly important for whether you're doing work, which is navigating through spreadsheets, or whether you're playing games, where an inverted T is really important. The other nice thing about the keyboard, it has a built-in foot, which you can move up or down, giving yourself 6 degrees of tilt, depending on how you're sitting in front of your iMac. And probably what's most important about this keyboard is not what's on the outside, but what's actually on the inside. So this keyboard is actually a USB hub inside. So we actually have 2 USB ports, one on each side. And that's not just for putting the mouse on the right or the left, which you can do. It also means that depending on which side you put your mouse, the other port is an open USB port. That means any USB peripheral can be hooked up to that port, whether it be a USB printer, USB scanner, USB input device, USB mass storage device. That is a full USB port, just like any other USB port. And finally, we have the mouse. again, we carried through the design language of the CPU itself in terms of translucency, and we wound up with what we think is the coolest looking mouse in the computer industry. A couple of things about the mouse. You'll notice that the mouse is very low profile. This is to ensure that the bend in your wrist is kept to a minimum. You also notice that the mouse is smaller than traditional mice. This is because this is more of a fine motor skill mouse. It's meant for you to move it around the table with your fingertips as opposed to the palm of your hand. It's kind of like when you're a little kid. When you're a little kid, you first learn to write with your whole arm, and then you later learn to write with just your fingers. That's the principle behind this mouse. Basically, move it around with your fingertips. And it's not that there's not any fun with this mouse. This mouse has translucent materials, and we actually have a multicolored mouse ball in there so you can see inside, and if you're incredibly bored someday, you can move the mouse around and see the see through the translucency and see the multicolored mouse ball in the mouse. So, from a style perspective, the iMac has a number of things. It has a very unique industrial design that's not only beautiful and attractive to look at, it's very practical because it keeps your desk space used to a minimum. Also, the iMac has a gorgeous 15-inch monitor. We spent a ton of time making sure the sharpness and focus and clarity from edge to edge on this monitor is absolutely the best on the market. In addition, this monitor has 3 resolutions, 640 by 480, 800 by 600, and 1024 by 768. And what's unique about this monitor is the scan rates at these resolutions are incredibly high. So at 1024 by 768, the scan rate for this monitor is 75 hertz. At 800 by 600, it's 95 hertz. And at 640 by 480, it's 117 hertz. What this means is that you get a rock solid, stable display with virtually no flicker, which reduces eye strain and just makes the iMac a pleasure to look at for hours on end. As I mentioned, we have a door on the side which allows you to close up the cables that are going into the ports on the side of the iMac, but at the same time there are ports so the cables can route through the front and through the back. And finally, we've carried the design language into the keyboard and mouse. So that's the style aspect of the iMac. The third major aspect of the iMac is simplicity. Now, as I mentioned, we have gone out and we've bought products from our competitors. We've unpacked them, tried to set them up ourselves, and we quite frankly think that computers are actually getting more and more complicated to use, whether it be speakers that you got to hang off your monitor or things that you got to screw in with a screwdriver. They're just not making things simpler for customers. So we wanted to address this with the iMac. We wanted to not only give people incredible power and the latest technology, but continue that tradition of Macintosh and give them a computer that's really simple to use. So we did this in a number of ways. First of all, we looked at what the out-of-box experience was and we improved it. So one of the things that we've done is we have worked with a company called Earthlink to improve the ease of which a customer can sign up for the internet with the iMac right out of the box. So we bundle something called Total Access with the iMac, which if they use the Internet Setup Assistant will launch a customer right into Total Access if they choose to sign up for an ISP, and that'll help them get on the internet as quickly as possible. Another major thing that we've done with the iMac to make it simple to use is we've integrated a lot of technologies. So obviously we've integrated the monitor and the speakers, but we've also integrated things like the modem. So what it means is to get an iMac up and running out of the box, you simply follow 4 or 5 steps. You unpack the iMac, put it on the desk, plug in the power, plug in the mouse to the keyboard into the iMac, hit the power, and it comes on, and you're ready to roll. The operating system is pre-installed, most of the applications that come with it are pre-installed, and you'll be up and running within minutes. A third major way that we've made the iMac simple to use is we focused on the essentials. We haven't cluttered it with extraneous technologies that people might not use. We focused on having a great monitor, great processing power, and great access to the internet. A final way that the iMac is simple to use is, of course, last but not least, Mac OS. The iMac comes with Mac OS 8.1, and again, we think that Mac OS is still the world's easiest to use, most powerful operating system, whether it be from plug and play to great multimedia to consistency between applications. Mac OS is still the simplest operating system to use, and again, the iMac is a Macintosh through and through. So those are the major themes of the iMac, but we wanted to add additional value to the iMac itself as we brought it to market. So with the iMac, we also wanted to include a really great collection of bundled software. So we think we've done that. With every iMac in the United States, we include Internet Explorer 401 to do web surfing and web browsing. We include Outlook Express 401 for email, and those applications are both from Microsoft. We also include Netscape Navigator for those customers who would rather have Netscape as their default browser. In addition, we include AppleWorks, which is the renamed ClarisWorks, and AppleWorks gives you word processing, spreadsheet, and database functionality. We also include Quicken 98 Deluxe for Macintosh, which allows people to manage their checkbook and do home finance and home banking. We include Williams-Sonoma Guide to Good Cooking, which is actually a recipe program which actually can not only give you recipes for really good dishes, but also if you're not familiar with how to do things, it will actually show you a little QuickTime movie to do things like how to carve a turkey and how to cook a roast. We also include FaxSTF for managing faxes, both sending and receiving faxes. And we include Kai's PhotoSoap from Meta Creations, which allows you to touch up any photographs that you may have on your iMac. And for the gamers out there, we include two really hot games. One is Nanosaur, which is a Mac-only game from a small company called Pangea Software. And we include MDK from Interplay, which is a futuristic 3D adventure game. So one final thought with the iMac is to think value. In addition to the tremendous speed and the outstanding style and the simplicity of the iMac and its bundled software, we've also thrown some things in here to really round out the value of the iMac. So for instance, this has a 4 GB hard drive. It also has a 56K modem that supports both V.90 and K56 Flex protocols. So basically all the things that I just covered in addition to the bundled software and the keyboard and mouse is all available for the suggested retail price of $12.99, and it's going to be available in August. So the iMac in and of itself is something that we're very proud of and we think is going to make a major impact on the industry. But there's actually a message behind the iMac that actually transcends the product, and the message is simply this: Apple as a company is back. Apple as a company is back to one simple philosophy, and that is making the world's best personal computers. It's back to sweating the details, to being an industry leader, to moving the industry forward, to setting trends again, to thinking different. So again, Apple is back. We're proud of the iMac, and we hope you enjoy it. Thanks.